ramifications. I want to bring in Congressman Khanna of California, whose district includes communities in the Silicon Valley. Thank you for joining us. Congressman, what do you think of the deal? You think this is great? You're concerned? What's your take?
Well, look, I mean, it's a free enterprise economy. Obviously, it's for Twitter's board of directors to decide who they sell to. The question is, what board of governance, corporate governance, is going to be set up? When Jeff Bezos bought Amazon, bought Washington Post, he's not making the editorial decisions there. There is an independence. And my question, I guess, for Elon Musk is, does he really want to be running Twitter? I mean, it's a thankless job. Who would want to do that? And is he going to set up some set of independence so that he answers questions like, is he going to be influenced if the Chinese Communist Party wants people to be taken off the Twitter platform?
In terms of that influence, how concerned are you? Do you think, by the way, regulators should be looking at this transaction in a way that perhaps they typically wouldn't? Obviously, on antitrust grounds, you historically wouldn't. Is there some other rationale where you look at this and think that Congress or Washington is going to look askance?
I think it's hard to look at the deal itself and say that there's some antitrust violation or some regulatory problem. I think what is more important is to say, well, this is why we need actually internet regulation, Internet Bill of Rights to protect people's data. We shouldn't just rely on Elon Musk. I mean, some of his suggestions of getting rid of bots, of having transparency, those are good things. But then I think there should be a hearing about what is the commitment to make sure that this is truly independent, that you don't have situations where foreign governments have leverage, that you have transparency on who's making the decisions on Twitter. Mark Zuckerberg learned that he making the decisions was not a good thing. That's why they created the Facebook Oversight Board. It probably doesn't have enough independence still. But my sense is that Elon Musk would be well served to have an independent board, maybe bring back Jack Dorsey, others, to actually run the day-to-day decision-making of what content moderation is on the platform.
Do you think, when you look back at Elon Musk, do you think that he will be a good steward of this concept of a town square based on what you've seen from him? I would also say, by the way, the government does a lot of business. The U.S. government does a lot of business with Elon Musk through SpaceX, Department of Defense. We could talk about debates around, or not even debates, conversations that are ongoing right now between Tesla and the U.S. government in terms of infrastructure for electric grids. I mean, there's lots of government roles that are related to the Tesla business.
Absolutely. I think it depends on what he does. If he's taking over the day-to-day management of Twitter, making determinations of who should be on the platform, who shouldn't be on the platform, making determinations of what speech crosses the line and what doesn't, then I think it's a disaster. Because, first of all, that's a thankless job. No one in America would be popular, and he would have a lot of conflicts of interest. But if he says, look, I have some high-level ideas. I want to get rid of bots. I want to have transparency, but I'm going to leave the day-to-day management to other people at Twitter, then I think it could be fine. And I want to keep an open mind because he hasn't really said what the plan is. And we should try to make sure that he does the right thing.
What do you think, though, and now I'm going to put it back on you and some of your peers and colleagues, not just in Congress, but across the country, some governors and the like, who have stepped in and oftentimes used their own political pressure on businesses recently. I think the greatest example in the last week, of course, was DeSantis in Florida. Some people cheered that. Others said that was actually on the wrong side of free speech. We've seen this issue come up and again where you've had companies speak out in certain cases in certain states around voting rights. And then you've seen the states themselves, try to take back tax benefits and the like. I'm thinking of what happened in Georgia. I mean, how much do you think that unto itself, talk about pressure, we're talking about it in China on an Elon Musk, but how that that dynamic has changed? That feels new.
Andrew, I think it's a fair point. And it's one of the reasons I didn't come on and say, well, of course, Twitter can't sell to Elon Musk. I mean, I think people in political office need to be careful about dictating what a company can or cannot do. It doesn't mean we can't express our hopes or ideals, say it would be nice if a company did X or Y. But I think you have to be very careful to use pressure of the government in a way that is picking on one particular company, as opposed to having broad-based laws that apply to everyone.
Do you think that the law inside Twitter is fair, meaning the rules that they've put in place, the people, including former President Trump, that they've banned for life, that those are fair things? Do you think that that is free speech?
Well, first, Andrew, I'll address Trump, but how many people have they kicked off? There's this idea that somehow Twitter is kicking off all these individuals. I mean, can you think of other people who they've kicked off? They really haven't kicked off that many people.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones they had, but you know why they kicked off Alex Jones? Because he was saying that the massacre in Connecticut of those kids was not true. I mean, of course someone should be kicked off.
You know where I stand on the question. I'm asking it to you because it is a question that a lot of our viewers look at and ask, and they believe, for better or worse, that Twitter has effectively silenced an entire group of people.
Well, I just think factually that's not true. And I mean, there are probably like 20 people who've gotten kicked off for egregious things. I think in the case of President Trump, it was appropriate to have the temporary suspension, which was a suspension based on the incitement of violence. Now, look, if he's the Republican nominee or if he's a major candidate, I think regardless of whether it's Elon Musk, I think probably anyone at Twitter would find a hard time saying that that person should be denied access to the platform. And then the question is, if he does enter the race in 24 and he's allowed back on, then what are the safeguards and guardrails saying if you incite violence again, you'll be back off? But my sense is that decision would be made regardless if it was Elon Musk. I just don't think you can keep a Republican leading contender off a platform unless there's, again, repeated bad action.
Congressman Khanna, always good to get your perspective on all this. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Coming up, believe it or not,